Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ogenin. I'm Jim Quist, and we're going to talk about, well, what else? The ACC Plus One College Football Weekend Wrap. Lots of football action, and man, if you weren't excited about some of these games in the ACC, well,
you don't have a pulse.
Yeah, something's wrong with you. And the same can be said for a lot of our top 25 oopsies, and wow, the game was that close? Are you crazy? Yeah, it was one of those weekends. And hey, I'll just start out with this. Saban's streak is sunk, Feinbaum flabbergasted.
I appreciate the use of alliteration there, Jim.
I tell you what, I had fun with this in the hours leading up to this program because I had some things that I shared with somebody else that I can't share here.
Keeping it family friendly.
Yeah, as much as possible. Absolutely. I'm still chuckling about some of those that we were talking about. Very, very inappropriate.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about that game. Jimbo Fisher becomes one of the first, and I love how they use this term, disciple of Nick Saban. It's like, okay, so now we're going back to the Nick Saban is the devil, and therefore Jimbo Fisher is one of his minions. He's a disciple. One of the coaching disciples from the Alabama tree. Usually that's a ring. It's just circular, but anyway, I digress. Actually pulled off a win against Alabama. Oh, Crimson Tide fans are boo-hooing today. And to say that we're enjoying their tears would be an understatement. I'm having them with my coffee and my cereal and anything else I can put into.
Coffee and tears of Alabama fans.
Oh, tasty, tasty. All right.
Sound like we're breaking out into a death metal song here.
We could. All we need now is Matthew, and then we'll be set. All right. It was Alabama falling to Texas A&M 41-38. And for a while, man, you knew they were going to come back. But, you know, for a while there, it looked like they were just getting a good old can of whoop ass laid on them. Mm-hmm. And it was very enjoyable. And before we get into this, just your comments here, I want to say this. A couple of weeks ago, Paul Feinbaum said, some things about Dabo's dynasty is done and all this and blah, 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 blah. And I just want to know, I've got one of yours here, Paul. Where's the other? If you had both of them, you still wouldn't say anything bad about the SEC. So on you. Okay. It's all yours.
Again, the use of alliteration, I approve. But yeah, I don't think anybody really expected what happened last night to happen when you really think about it. And Texas A&M has been very inconsistent so far this year. I think they went to Colorado, who's probably one of the worst Power 5 teams out there, and only beat them like 10-3.
And by the way, who coaches Colorado?
Carl Durrell.
Okay.
Former UCLA coach, I think he was at one point, if I'm not mistaken, but still, we were making fun, last week, Texas A&M lost, and we were talking about, they're stuck with this contract for years because they're not going to be able to afford the buyout. And I'm sure Jimbo's going to get like another 10 years thrown onto his contract after this game. Sure. I mean, and it's not like they were like, those stats really pop out to you other than the 41 points. It's like, Alabama put up 522 yards of offense on them. They only had 379, but they still won, which means stats aren't the only the only thing out there. You got to put
Yeah.
up points, and Alabama allowed 4 sacks in this game. So there you go. That's part of it. Texas A&M's defense really showed up when it mattered. Zach Calzada had a pretty good game through the air. No, like eye-popping stats like we're going to get to a little later in the ACC, but this is it's a huge win for obviously Texas A&M because they needed it. It's I think this is the kind of loss in reality that Nick Saban wanted, because now he can tear into some players and tell them how bad they are.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you who's going to tear into Alabama based upon what I watched in that game. Georgia is going to shred them. I mean, if they're not, Georgia is going to be number 1 in the poll.
Oh yeah.
Okay, no doubt about that. As a matter of fact, they are listed in ESPN's college football power rankings as number 1, which they should be. And Alabama fell to 5 in that. So no surprises. Anyway, you're probably wondering why we're just going on and on about Alabama losing, because it's so tasty, daggone it.
Delicious.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Other whoopsies and wow, it was this close type of games. Ole Miss over Arkansas, number 17 over number 13, 52-51. As my wife so eloquently put it, there's no defense on either one of these teams. It's like, what kind of score do you see like that? There's no defense.
Yeah, I see. I mean, the letter D does not. The letter D does not exist in Ole Miss Running Rebels or Arkansas Razorbacks. So,
right.
I mean, this was like the type of score you see in a Virginia basketball game, 52-51. But this is both of these are really good offenses. I mean, that's Lane Kiffin's bread and butter is putting up points on offense, except for last week against Alabama. But we've seen it. We saw them just destroy Louisville, sorry. And I mean, Arkansas has been known to put up points. They put up 40 on Texas early on in the season, so they can score. And this game, had all the makings of a shootout. And I applaud Arkansas for trying to go for the win there and going for 2. But I mean, it didn't work. But still, props to them for doing it. I mean, great game. Unless you're a fan of defense.
That's right. Oof. And number 10, BYU kisses any possibility of a New Year's Eve 6 game. Boise State, an unranked team, knocking off number 10 BYU 26-17. I'm not too surprised here, to be honest with you. I always thought BYU there was too much smoke being blown there. What can I say?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I actually am a little bit surprised. I mean, Boise State isn't quite as good as they've been in years past, but
True.
It just felt like BYU just didn't have it yesterday. I mean, we've seen their Boise State's quarterback, Hank Bachmeier. I think he played a couple of years ago when they went to Florida State, and I think they either beat them or lost close. I can't remember, but they still have the talent. But like I said, they're a little down. And BYU, I mean, I think them being a top 10 team was a big surprise, and it's just kind of flown under the radar. But great effort by the Broncos that opens. They needed that win, and BYU is. They obviously show they're a really good team, a really well coached team in Kalani Sitake. And, we'll see them a little bit later this year. They take on Virginia. So I'll be curious to see how that game goes.
Yeah. Number 24, SMU escapes with a 31-24 win over Navy.
I mean, yeah, Navy has been down from recent years. And obviously I didn't get to see this game. So I'm just wondering if this is just a thing where their style of football just doesn't is a problem with SMU's defense.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to really stop that kind of offense if you're not used for what Navy runs, that triple option. But at the same time, SMU does have Tanner Mordecai, and he's a stud quarterback, threw for over 300 yards in this game. And SMU, another one of those G5 teams that certainly needs some attention because they are a good team.
I wasn't too surprised by this final score. Number 3, Iowa over Penn State at number 4, 23-20. That should have been a close game. And the final outcome, I know I have a Penn State fan in my circle of friends who just
Are we ready to talk about Iowa being the number 2 team in the country? Probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
and deservedly so.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, their defense has been their calling card this season. They've had some really good defensive efforts, and this game too was no exception. I mean, holding Penn State to 20 points is a good, and we all knew going into this game that it was going to be kind of a low scoring affair. Both teams have pretty good defenses. This is Kirk Ferentz is probably his best coaching job so far throughout his career, getting him up to what will probably be number 2 in the country here in a little, when the polls come out. I was a little surprised at the way how Penn State's offense went at the end of the game when their 2-minute drill. I remember turning it over and see them running for like 3 yards on first down when they were deep into their own territory. I'm like, what are you doing? And I know I don't remember if they got a first down or not on that final drive, but they certainly didn't get very far. That was very head scratching.
Desperation.
My head.
Yeah,
Paul.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 9, Michigan over unranked Nebraska, 32-29.
Well, it's so funny. Nebraska's been a better team since that first week loss to Illinois. I think they finally figured out that they have a decent team. I mean, they're not Nebraska of old, but no. They've been close in some games. I know their record doesn't indicate it, but they have been playing better. Taylor Martinez, he's been pretty good. He's pretty much their only offense. So, but at the same time, like I say, Michigan, another team that's exceeded expectations to this point. I didn't think anybody would really think of them as a top 10 team to this point, but their offense has been a lot better than expected.
And hey, did I happen to bring this game up? Texas A&M beat Alabama. Did I mention that earlier?
Paul, they's teasing us.
Yes, we are. All right, let's get into the ACC +1. Boy, first game. This isn't what I expected at all between Georgia Tech and Duke. And the emotions on this game for fans and among some of our fellow media bloggers was all over the place. Love them 1 second, hate them the next, love them again, hate them again. It's like, wow. Maybe more meds will help, or more, sessions with your therapist. I don't know. Georgia Tech came away with a win. Duke actually, had a good comeback. But still, as we have been saying forever and a day, we believe this should be the end of Paul Cutcliffe's coaching at that school. If he wants to continue someplace else, that's fine. I just think it's time to move on. And it would be the gentlemanly thing to do to say, this is my last season, and to step aside. We'll see if that happens. Georgia Tech 31, Duke 27.
So let me start on the Duke side real quick. Did you see how many carries Mateo Duran had in this game? Somebody give him all a big old ice bath or something, as he ran the ball 43 times in this game.
Staggering.
152 yards.
He was feeling it today and tomorrow, and
he's going to be feeling it for a while. I mean, he's been, the focal point of the offense, and I don't blame him using it, but at the same time, if he's going to have an NFL career, potentially at any point, that's I would call that a bit questionable to be running your running back 43 times in a game. But that's what he wants to do. Whatever. I'm just some dude 1,000 miles away who who just sits and talks about these games. But yeah,
Miles.
I will say Gunnar Holmberg looked good in this game. 22 of 29, 292 and a touchdown. So he's starting to get into a rhythm of throwing a football. I will say that he has been throwing a ball. For Georgia Tech, I mean, the problem with Jeff Sims is he still has that turnover issue. He threw 2 picks in this game.
I can't hold on to the ball.
Or he has a problem with throwing it to the other team, really. But 12 of 25, but for 297 yards. And let me just do this real quick. I'm going to give you some of the completion yardage on some of Sims's throws. 36, 37, 39, 25, 39, and 77. I think that's like half of his completions right there. So when he seemed like when he was completing them, they were getting big chunks of yardage off of it. Now I will say Duke's defense did a good job against Jahmyr Gibbs in the ground. He only had 40 yards rushing, averaging less than 3 yards per carry, but he also had a 77-yard touchdown catch. So still had over 100 total yards in this game.
Yeah, and Sims has proven that he is a dual threat. So without any doubt, we knew that. And so if the run game is not working, you go to the air. And boy, you're right. Those numbers that he put up with passing yards, just incredible. I saw a couple of passes that I was just like, it was like, whoa. I mean, it was just incredible. But he did have a couple of picks. That's something I think that quarterbacks everybody's going to have picks. And I'm not making excuses for Sims, but I think that he is continuing to evolve and will continue to get better. I just hope that he sticks around a little bit longer to polish up his game, because he has potential moving forward. We'll see what type of potential that is. And it's kind of hard to tell sometimes when you're playing for Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech should be a lot better next year. And maybe we'll get to see that potential that I think is there come out. We'll see. Now, this is a game you were alluding to earlier, because when you talk about stats, it's like I felt like I was walking into a casino and pulling a lever, and it just kept on coming up sevens. And I mean, it was crazy. Virginia pulls off just an amazing game overall. And I know our buddy Jeremy wasn't thrilled with the outcome, obviously, because he's a Louisville fan, but wow, 34-33. That was just the most incredible game I've ever seen. It going right down to the wire, literally the last second. Virginia over Louisville, 34-33.
So let me just take a moment to toot my own horn here, because for those of you who missed it, I was on the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast this week with our friend Jeremy previewing the game. And one of the questions he was asking me, and one of them was like, all right, how is Louisville going to win this football game? And I said, they need to run the football, because they will run it successfully. 233 yards on the ground in this game, averaging almost 7 yards per carry. And then conversely, I was like, so Virginia's going to win this game. They're just going to have to throw the ball. Brennan Armstrong, 40 of 60, 487 yards and 3 touchdowns. And in the fourth quarter alone was 14 of 21 for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Crazy.
Louisville was up 30-13 at the end of the third quarter. Virginia outscores them 21-3 in the fourth quarter for the 34-33 final. A little bit the game kind of got off to a rough start for Virginia, because Dontavian Wicks got hurt early in the game, took a blow to the head that for some reason was not called targeting when it was clearly targeting. I mean, ACC refs have no bleeping clue what targeting is, so whatever. But and Rayshon Henry and his plays stepped up with 9 catches and 179 yards. Keaton Thompson, 9 catches, 132 yards in this one. He had a couple of huge catches on fourth downs that on the final drive that helped helped keep the game alive for Virginia. And then finally Armstrong hit Grant Mish in the corner of the end zone for the winning touchdown. But naturally, Cardiac Calves at it again because Louisville went right down the field and set up for a game-winning field goal, and for the second week in a row, it missed to the left, and Virginia holds on for another win, and they're up to 4-2 on the season, and despite the lack of defense, and then they have their next two opponents are Georgia Tech and Duke, and you would think they'd be favored in those two games, so there's an outside shot that 2 weeks from now we could be talking about a 6-2 Virginia. I mean, the game next week does scare me a little bit because Georgia Tech does run the ball really well, and obviously Virginia doesn't stop it very well. So we'll see what kind of defensive game plan they have for that. But again, I no shame in Louisville. They played very well. Obviously put up 500 yards offense in this game. This game was, I think you could say this was an even game, even though Virginia had the 1 point win.
So for those of you who may not follow Will and or Jeremy, and you really ought to follow both of them on Twitter, this exchange, I think, said it all. As Virginia was coming back, Jeremy is big into wrestling, very, very big. In fact, he does a wrestling podcast.
Yep.
So we'll post this GIF of the Undertaker
yep.
rising up off of the mat, and it was the most appropriate one I have ever seen at that given moment ever.
And I had posted it right when Virginia got the ball back to when they had when they were going down the score.
That was absolutely a scream.
And then Jeremy counters with after they score with Ric Flair of taking a bump and falling down, and that overreacting way that he's been famous for.
Oh yes. Definitely check out Jeremy on Twitter because he's quite the character.
He is. And let's say I even said this on Twitter that afterwards, we record our podcast was an hour long and we still talked for another 40 minutes afterwards, just talking about football and wrestling and just stuff in general. So it was a fun conversation.
He's a good guy.
Yep.
We always like to have him on the show, and get an opportunity. Make sure you listen to that's Cardinal Sports Zone, their podcast with Will and Jeremy, and talking about the game prior to. So it'll be fun to look back if you listen. Anyway, let's move on to our next game. Boy, this is two of our guys on our pigskin picks projected that this is going to happen. Both Mike Lewis and Jim Bresnahan were saying that Syracuse was in a position to really give Wake Forest fits, and that this could be an upset. And, it was a red flag. They saw something there. I didn't see it. I couldn't imagine. However, they were spot on with this because this game between number 19 Wake Forest, who is going to be bumped up in the top 25 again this week, went to overtime. 40-37 Wake Forest over Syracuse. That was actually a very good game, and I enjoyed watching what little bit I did get to see.
Yeah. And the guys obviously had a good reason to say that Syracuse could do it. Obviously, aside from being at home, we've seen Syracuse play much better these last few weeks. They've put Gare Schrader as quarterback, and he is a better fit for this offense.
Yes.
Running the foot with the running game between him and Sean Tucker, and those two ran the ball 55 times total in the game, had over 300 yards. Syracuse as a team had 354 yards rushing. So they averaged over 6 yards a carry. And yeah, this is what they're going to be. And they've turned into a secretly decent team. I mean, their defense actually did a pretty good job against Wake's rushing attack, held them at 2.6 yards per carry. But Sam Hartman, 19 of 32, 330, 3 touchdowns, big overtime touchdown to A.T. Perry, who caught 3 balls and all 3 went for touchdowns. Jacory Roberson, 9 for 135 in this game. Wake, I feel like they do have the golden horseshoe right now. When you look at everything that's gone their way, they have a turnover margin that is, I think, +8. I think it stayed net 0. Yeah, because both teams turned the ball over once. So I think they have a +8 turnover margin, which again is probably for this time of year isn't sustainable. They've just had a lot of luck with games like this. And then the last game against Louisville, which is controversial. So yeah, there's reason to believe that Wake could, they're probably going to take an L at some point. It could be next week, and then there's the possibility, because this is the ACC, that they just may run the table, finish 12-0. That's just there are so many potential outcomes with these teams right now, because everyone can be good one week and bad next week, and yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule for both Syracuse and Wake, and we go to Syracuse first. It's a shame that this team is finally finding itself as they're heading into the latter portion of the season, because the end of the season for Syracuse is going to be brutal. They've got Clemson coming up on Friday, the 15th of October. Then they've got Virginia Tech, Boston College, Louisville, NC State, and Pitt.
Yeah, that schedule does them no favors. I mean, not at all. I mean, and they have Clemson at home. Keep it in mind. Going to Blacksburg's going to be tough. BC at home. That's going to be a tough game. Obviously, we'll see where they're at in a few weeks. At Louisville, Louisville's going to be tough. At NC State's going to be tough, and Pitt at home. They're all going to be tough. So they're, like I said, they could be 3-9, but look really good. They could probably pull off a few upsets here. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
They keep playing like this and they get it together and they have confidence in themselves. I think they could pull off, at least on this schedule, very possibly 2 upsets that I see. Now, I'm not going to say who.
Yeah,
you guys can guess. I'm not going to say. Wake Forest, their schedule's not quite as bad. They've got Army coming up on the 23rd, so they've got a week off. On the 30th, they've got Duke. On November 6th, it's North Carolina. That's their non-conference game, which, is cool. People always ask, why is that a non-conference game? Look into it, folks. It's called Google.
It's called research.
Yes. NC State, the 13th. On the 20th of November, it's Clemson. And the 27th at Boston College. Now, the end of the last 3 games, NC State, Clemson, Boston College, I think are going to test their mettle.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find out just how good Wake Forest truly is.
Yeah, they could be 8-0 going into that Carolina game, and there's a chance they could lose the last 4 games. It's not out of the realm of possibility here.
It's like Will said, welcome to the ACC, folks. Mm-hmm. All right, our next game, Florida State over North Carolina. And I have so many mixed emotions about the outcome of this game. I don't even know where to start. 35-25, the Seminoles pulling off a huge win over the Tar Heels.
I think the most surprising stat in this game is that Sam Howell was not sacked at all. Let that soak in for a moment, folks. That's a big deal. I mean, it doesn't happen very much. I think that's the first time this year he's not been sacked in a game. Mm-hmm. But I think some of this is more about what Florida State's doing than what NC State or UNC is doing. Excuse me. It's finally realizing that they just need to stick with Jordan Travis and just run the hell out of the football. I mean, they ran 54 plays against North Carolina. 41 of them were runs between Jordan Travis, Trayshawn Ward, and Jashawn Corbin. And they ran for 238 yards on the ground, averaging almost 6 yards per carry. That's what Florida State needs to do to win games. And we've seen they've won back-to-back games and are looking like a decent team. Now, Carolina is still a very talented team. Sam Howell only threw for 203 yards in this game, but ran for 108. Carolina ran for 229, averaging about 6.5 yards per carry. Josh Downs, another 9-catch, 121-yard game. It's kind of a shame that he's going kind of unnoticed in a way because he's just been an absolute stud for the Tar Heels this year. But yeah, Carolina is, I can't, this is far and away the most disappointing team in the league. Cause I mean, I know they were preseason top 10. I said they weren't. I thought more top 15, but they might not be a top 35, 40 team at this point.
Yeah. And I think the thing I come away with here, I think Mac Brown in his end of game press conference was talking about the media maybe putting too many expectations on the shoulders of the Tar Heels, or lofting them to heights they shouldn't be at, or however you put it. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people took that as a cop out by Brown, and I think Mac Brown is the type of guy he's pretty much just going to say, hey, this is what's on my mind for the most part. I'll sugarcoat a little bit of it, but I'm not going to. I think he's probably right. We collectively, I say we, placed the Tar Heels in the top 10, as you mentioned. They shouldn't have been there. And again, this is an argument that you and I have in regard to polling, is that preseason polls don't mean squat, because most of these people who are voting have never watched any of these teams, don't have any clue as to who's there, who's not there, who's left. If you're on a top 25 big board as a member voting, you should be staying up and watching the games that involve ranked teams on the West Coast. Sorry, but most of them don't.
People also have families and can't stay up until 1 a.m. in the East or whatever.
I'm thoroughly there with you, Will. I get it. Totally get that. And but when you take that responsibility of being a voter for something, take it seriously. And if you can't do it, that's okay. I mean, hey, there's plenty of things in life that I've said no to, and I wish I had done them, but time considerations and stuff like that. The other thing is there's plenty of stuff that I have committed to, done a lot of been on a lot of government commissions and things like that. Took up a crazy amount of my time, personal life, etc. But it was something I was dedicated to, and I knew how much time was involved, and I said yes. And once I did that, I stayed with it. Now, if somebody were to ask me, would you be a top 25 voter? I would say absolutely no. And just because of what you said, I have family, and I kind of like to go to bed at a reasonable hour, to be honest with you. I mean, sometimes I'll stay up late. I was up until about 2, earlier, Saturday night, Sunday morning. But for the most part, I wouldn't want to do it. I don't want to spend all that time watching that much football constantly. So it's a grind. I get that part of it, but I'm just saying to the people who do vote, if you made the commitment, it's not about buffing up that resume, man. Because quite honestly, anymore, having that on your resume, I don't think means as much as it used to. Right now, I would just say, hey, maybe you should reconsider and think twice about this, unless you're committed to watching a lot of football and spending a lot of time. Because what we get are situations where teams like UNC get lofted to unreasonable levels in top 25 polls. And like you said, maybe they're a top 35 team. I don't know. Maybe not.
But in fairness, too, I mean, I don't think anybody expected the offensive line to take such a significant step backwards either.
No, probably not. But after one or two games of truly watching some of these games, I think that they should have been taken immediately out of the top 25. I mean, that's my opinion. But again, I'm not a voter, so I can have an opinion, and opinions and beep. Everybody's got one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's move on because I got on my sanctimonious soapbox there and did my best Paul Feinbaum imitation. So
Skip.
of being a beep. Anyway, Florida State, nice big win there. So and you're right, the running game. This bodes well. I think this team is starting to find out who they are, and next year, right? So we'll see. Now, this last game of Saturday was another barn burner. Man, this was wild. Number 14 Notre Dame finally pulling off a win, and I'm telling you, it was by the hair of their chinny chin chin. 32-29 over Virginia Tech. If it weren't for a few things, I think Tech would have had this game without any question. But that's not how it ended. That's not the final score. So woulda, shoulda, coulda makes no difference.
Did you say barn burner?
Barn burner. There we go. Light your beard.
Yeah. Fire beard. This was a fun game. A lot of attrition in this game. Braxton Burmeister was banged up, left the game for a while, came back in, but he clearly wasn't himself. I know he had a shoulder injury in the game, and he toughed through it. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
He completed less than 50% of his passes for 171 yards. And the running game really couldn't get going either. They averaged 3.6 yards per carry. I mean, Notre Dame's got a good defense. So it's not like, not to take away anything away from Tech's offense, which, people are still, complaining about the offensive coordinator. And I don't think no matter what happens, nothing's going to change that opinion, I'm afraid. But still got questions with the Notre Dame passing attack. I mean, Jack Cohn started. He came out, didn't play very well. They brought in Tyler Buckner, the freshman, who played well for a while, but then threw a pick six and then got picked off again. And then they brought Cohn back into the game and he finished it off. So, still some quarterback issues there. Not sure how Brian Kelly's going to fix it, but I just don't know if playing two quarterbacks is the right move for them right now. We'll say, a decent game from Kyron Williams, 19 carries, 74 yards and a touchdown. Buckner actually ran for 67 and a touchdown. So they got a little bit done on the ground once Buckner came into the game. It just, like I said, Notre Dame edged out a win. And, I actually think fairly well of Virginia Tech's defense, more so than I did before. And maybe it's just, the home crowd is just giving them that extra boost, and it's a big deal, obviously, and good win for Notre Dame. And they obviously are coming off their first loss of the season and needed a boost after that one. And I still don't know what Notre Dame will be the rest of the year. Some of their games are going to be tough. Some of their I'm probably still going to put them at 9 wins, but I'm not super confident in that.
Thanks for joining us on ACC Nation. Follow us by subscribing on your favorite podcast or streaming radio platform and on YouTube. We'd appreciate a 5-star rating while you're there. Visit our homepage at accnation.net and support us via PayPal. Keep up with the latest by following us on Google News. You can find ACC Nation on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, and Pinterest. Follow Will at Will's World MN, and I'm at ACC The Q. Cheers.
Score.